Yeah, I look forward to having Dave with us. I think some of you might have heard him before. He's been he's been a state representative over in the late 90s and early 2000, I believe was his time schedule there. Three-termer. He was voted out of Granville, and very, very well supported by his district. But the Republican Party didn't really appreciate his strong stands, his conservative stance. He was always named as the most conservative representative in the state house in Michigan. And so if any of you follow him on Facebook, that would be a good place for you to visit. Dave Agema.
Okay, I'm here.
Oh, wonderful. Good to have you with us, Dave. I was just singing some of your praises.
Well, we don't have electricity here where I'm at, folks. So what happened is we couldn't use the regular, so I'm using just my cell phone to go over. That's what the big problem was. So here we go.
Well, we're glad to have you with us. I'm going to have an opening word of prayer, and we'll go ahead and get started. Well, Lord, we thank you for bringing those who are here with us today. We thank you for these opportunities to serve in this way. And we thank you, Lord, that we can use even this technology to inform and exhort and encourage. Lord, in these days, we need your help. And I'm thankful, we are thankful for those, many of us that know Dave. We're thankful for his faithful stand in many ways, in military and in service in the State House and far beyond. So be with us today and use this time. And we pray this in the name of your son, Jesus. Amen. Dave, I didn't have a chance to say too much about you, and I didn't want to steal too much of your opening words either, but I would like you to open with just telling you about your initial parts of your life and how God led you in some of the early steps that you took, particularly with military and growing up years.
Well, I joined the military during the height of the Vietnam War when all my friends were running to Canada because I wanted to fly. I came from more of a intermediate type of class. We didn't have much money to fly, so it was my opportunity to do it. I graduated from Calvin College. I applied to the Air Force, the Navy, and the Marines my junior year of college and got accepted into pilot training to all three. I picked the Air Force. I went through the Air Force Officer Training School, then pilot training, and graduated high enough to pick whatever I wanted to fly. So we had to make a big decision. If I picked an F4, which I did, probability to be high, go to Vietnam. However, half the class went to Vietnam, half didn't. They took the married guys, and we didn't go, and they took the single guys, they sent them there. So I went elsewhere. I spent, if you add that, I spent about 7.5 years active duty, another 7.5 years, 8 years in Air National Guard and reserves, and total with the reserves and everything about 26 years. And then I got basically out of that, and I decided to run for office because I didn't like politicians, and that's quite honestly the truth. Most of the time they open their mouth, they're not telling you the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So I ran against 9 other people that were all incumbent, or not incumbent, but typical politicians already in politics. I was not. I went down to Kent County here and said, what do I got to do? And they said, quit, you can't win. Well, that's kind of a challenge to a fighter pilot. I started my progress of getting my committee together and started walking door to door. When all my opponents were going down to Lansing and talking to the PACs and the lobbyists and so forth, I didn't do any of that. I just stayed home and knocked on doors. And when the election results shocked everybody because I beat everybody by more than a double margin. And then for the general, I won first term by about 70%. Second term, about 75%, and the third term, almost 80%. And when I went to Lansing, I thought I'd see a bunch of very smart individuals that knew what they were doing. I found out that most of the individuals there, not many of them knew much about economics. They didn't know much about finance. Quite frankly, most of them are just plain ignorant about those things, yet they're making decisions of multi-billion-dollar budgets that is your tax dollars. So when I got to Lansing, I ran an issue right off the bat, 2006, when I was knocking on doors, stopping illegal immigration, because I saw what happened when I was a pilot with American Airlines for almost 30 years. We were hauling people from San Diego to Chicago, and 5 minutes before the door would shut, either I'd have a whole bunch of people jumping on my airplane at the last minute, and then I asked finally what's going on. He said, well, they're illegals, and if INS is checking, they hear, and then they won't come. So I'd always be booked full, but sometimes I go out with 40 seats open, and at the last minute, a bunch of people would come on. Then when I ran a machine shop prior to...
What year was that? What years were that, Dave?
Oh, man, that would be, see, I got hired in 78, so it'd be 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, in that region.
Wow, so it was already happening then.
Oh, sure, thousands of them. And then I ran a machine shop just prior to running for the election, and I had to go through 3 temporary worker agencies to get a legal worker. And I'd hire somebody, and we'd do a E-Verify check on them and found out they're illegal. And then the one individual said, well, there's 200 of us working right down the street. They don't check. Those are all jobs Michigan citizens need. So I really bothered me. So that's one of the first things I did, is put those bills in. And the other thing I kind of ran on was stopping Sharia law Islam, because I know what that is, and that's probably what we're going to get into.
What bills were those that you put in?
Well, I put an E-Verify bill, which basically says to a company, for example, if you have a good secretary, you can sign up for this, and in about 25 minutes, you'll be hooked in with the government. So let's say they're going to hire Dave Agema, and they go to hire me, and they got my name, and then they ask for your social security number. Well, you can send that, just put that name and social security number and hit a button, and it goes to Washington, and it checks over 400 million documents. It sees whether the name matches the social security number. It sees whether I'm here on a worker visa and overextended, or a green card and overextended, and it comes back confirmed or not confirmed. If it comes back not confirmed, it's about 99.7% sure you're looking at an illegal. Well, the other case is with the people who are against the bill, they'd say, well, it's not accurate. Well, it's very accurate, but it also catches people who get married. And when they get married, they have now a different last name, so it comes back not confirmed because they didn't change their social security number with a new last name they have. But that's what they try to use as an excuse that it doesn't work. So I tried to get that pushed, and even Jay Sloger, when he was a Speaker of the House, said, yep, he helped me get that passed, and he lied. The Governor Snyder did not want that, so it didn't happen. Neither did Granholm that was there before that. So they wanted the illegals here because, quite frankly, a lot of them vote, and they're going to be future Democrat voters because most of them are on welfare even 5 years after they come here. So I put that bill in, and then while I was a state rep, I was invited to go to Turkey. And just before that, I had invited Kamal Salim and General Boykin to come to the Capitol and speak to the legislators of what the goals of Islam is. Because most of them are really ignorant, have no clue. They're too busy naming streets and raising your taxes. So I advertised a month ahead of time, 2 weeks ahead of time, a week ahead of time, 2 days before, and the day of. And each one of those times, somebody got a piece of paper on their desk telling these people were coming. We had to get special security because Kamal Salim has money on his head. We don't know how much, but they want to kill him, obviously, because he's a former Muslim, not Christian. They came and basically briefed us. Unfortunately, of 148 legislators, only 10 of them showed, which tells you they don't give a rip about this kind of stuff. They do not recognize the enemy within, which is Islam within the United States. Of course, now we have more enemies. I can get into that in a little bit, but you're having Islam, you're having Black Lives Matter, you're having Antifa all joining forces now to cause chaos of bedlam because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So when I got back from that trip, I got to back up a little bit. While I was there, they treated us like kings, and they were taking legislators and congressmen from all over the United States down to Turkey, treating us really good. And just before you leave, you meet with some of the high monkey bucks of the government, and we met with them. And go ahead. They spoke perfect English, and then finally, I just wanted to find out if what Jerry Boykin and Kamal Salim told me before I left. He said they're just going to ask for more green cards and worker permits. They just want to be friendly to the United States. He said it's absolutely bogus. What they want is more Muslims in the United States to cause their civilization jihad, which the Muslim Brotherhood has been pushing for years. We found out about that when al-Barasi, a Muslim guy that was dressed up like a female, looking at the Chesapeake Bridge and taking pictures that looked a little suspicious. So they checked on the guy and found out he was a guy. And then they went to his home, and in a sub-basement, they found massive amount of documents for the Muslim Brotherhood, destroy America from within. So that's exactly what Turkey was trying to do, get more Muslims in here. When they get to a certain number, they're not friendly anymore. Then they start getting involved like they are now in your Congress, in your state legislature, and in your schools. So what they're doing now is they're getting into your schools, and your kids are being taught the 5 pillars of Islam as if it's peaceful. Absolutely a lie. Something that CARE, Council on American, they they got a lot of money to push the terrorist engagement. So the Holy Land Foundation trials of 2008 were held in Texas. Now, the Holy Land Foundation was a organization that raised money for terrorism in the United States. They listed as unindicted co-conspirators in that trial some 28 other organizations like CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, ISNA, Islamic Society of North America, Muslim Student Association. And that's important because now your kids are being brought up from kindergarten all the way through high school being taught false history, because all the school books that your kids have in public school now, they go to a Muslim committee for anything that is negative about Islam. So these kids are coming out that thinking Islam is peaceful. They don't know the 1,400 years of mass murder, rape, and pillaging that they have done. Their goal is still the same goal it's always been. That is the world Ummah. Ummah is they want the whole world to be Muslim. And you have a choice. You may become a Muslim, you may die, or you may pay the jizya or the life tax to survive, but then they can kill you anytime they wish. So that's what's going on, basically. And what I don't see is pastors, and I don't see politics pushing this. So when I got back from that trip, and I got to back up again, while I was there talking to those guys in Turkey, finally I asked the guy, what do you think of America? And he said, I don't think it's fair. I said, well, what's not fair? He said, well, when you attacked Iraq, you killed more than 3,000 people, but only 3,000 people were killed on 9/11. Well, the hair on the back of my neck went up. I kind of lost it there, and I looked at the guy. I said, well, you're lucky we're not the Russians. And he looked at me and says, why's that? I said, because the Russians believe if you kill 1/3 of the civilian population, the 2/3 will shut up and fall in line. My wife then bumped me in my ribs and said, shut up, Dave, we got to get out of here. And the guy never spoke English the rest of the night. So I came back from that meeting understanding what their real goals were, what they were really after, that Kamal Salim and General Boykin were spot on. By the way, General Boykin told me that ISIS is in every state of the union today, waiting for the orders for jihad. So I got back and I put ALEC in, American Law for American Courts. Several states had already passed it. What does that bill do? This one did not get passed either.
About what year was that? I know Chris and I both were at one of those meetings.
It's got to be, I'm thinking, and when I put that bill in, what
did you say about 2007, 2006?
No, 2010 or 2011, I think it was. Somewhere there. Somewhere within that region. So what that bill does, it says to judges and courts, you will not use a foreign law in a court of law if it causes anyone to lose their constitutional rights. Now, who could be against that, right? Well, a lot of people could, because what's happening now in Michigan and other places, in Minnesota and a lot of other states, Muslims are having their own courts. And particularly this gets real involved when they have custody cases. Because under Islam, a Muslim man can say to his wife, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you for any reason whatsoever, and they are divorced. That's not our law. They then have control of the kids. And then that also brings up all kinds of other issues. They have child brides. That's going on in the United States today. Muhammad himself married a 6-year-old girl, abused her till she was 9, then raped her when she was, abused her till 9, then raped her when she was 9. And that was his wife. They're having child brides going on here in the United States as we speak. So some of the cities now have no-go zones where you're not allowed to go in, and the Muslims have their own courts. They have their own police cars. That's what they're doing. And
And
just
Dave,
nobody
Dave,
seems to get rid.
name a few areas where that actually does exist, where they have the.
I think that's happened in Minnesota. They got some no-go zones. The police won't even go into those areas. I'm not sure if we got that in Dearborn yet. But I know if you take a little drive through Dearborn, are there anybody on the phone that's from the eastern side or on this meeting?
Not that I'm seeing right now, but then there's a couple that are on
Okay.
phone numbers. Yeah, I don't think so.
Well, drive through there once. You'll think you're in Baghdad. You won't think you're in they do not assimilate. So let's just go, how are they getting Sharia law in the United States today? On September 11, 2001, the jihadis attacked and destroyed the World Trade Center. The attack was a political action motivated by a religious mandate for endless jihad. So that was the beginning of Sharia. Textbooks, like I said, in America must be approved by Islamic groups. American employers now in schools are met with demands for time and space for Islamic prayer. That's confirms the demands for Sharia law. American banking systems are becoming Islamicized with Sharia financing. The banking system is becoming Sharia compliant in financial law, but they're ignorant about the totality of the Sharia law. In other words, when a Muslim comes into a bank, like Fifth Third Bank, for example, they're Sharia compliant. They don't realize that when they do their banking there and any money they make, a certain percentage of the money the Muslims make must go to jihad. They don't know that. So the banks are compliant. Our universities are completely infiltrated with MSA, Muslim Student Association. And they also are asked to provide sexually segregated swimming pools, other athletic facilities. That's in compliance with Sharia law. Hospitals are being sued for not providing Sharia compliant treatment. College courses, college levels, they're not using critical thinking regarding the history and doctrine of Islam. American prisons. I used to go to the prison and sing. And we had Muslims way back already in prison there. They proselytizing in your jails. That's a big proselytization point for them in their jails for the disenfranchised. And workplaces are being made Islamic worship sites to special rooms, time off to pray. That's also in accordance with Sharia law. Islamic refugees bring all their wives for welfare and medical treatment to America. And American authorities will not act, even when presented with evidence. Polygamy is included in Sharia law, and it's going on today in Michigan. So all over the world, you're seeing these battles, which you don't hear much about because of the quote-unquote pandemic we have going on now, which I don't believe is quite the pandemic that our government says it is. But there's people being killed today. Islam has killed somewhere between 400 and 500 million people in the last 1,400 years, and it doesn't end. It's still going on now, big time in Africa. If you look at Europe now, you'll look at England, France, Germany, they're all having huge problems because they opened the floodgates to immigration for Muslims. So let's just slow down a minute. Let's see, what does Sharia law really say? It says there's no freedom of religion. You must be Muslim, it must be Islam, or you die, or you pay the Jesus tax. There's no freedom of speech. You cannot speak against Islam. If a person that claims to be a Muslim speaks against his own religion, he's to be killed. There's no freedom of artistic expression. Matter of fact, every time they go into a Christian church or artworks, they tend to take them down, tear them down. I think that's why some of these people are tearing down some of our statues and so forth. There's
Okay,
no freedom
Dave,
of press.
just to go, I want to go back. We've gone forward. Let's go back just a little bit. When you were still,
Okay.
when you were working on the American laws for American courts,
Yeah.
you had there was a point where you did have some hope, but
yeah.
it all fell apart. Talk about that so
Well,
that we have an understanding of some of the kind of battle that can take place in a state legislature.
Well, first of all, in Lansing, I do not think Snyder wanted to pass American law for American courts because he got money from the Muslims for his reelection. So he didn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. So if he's going to veto the bill, a lot of the legislators are afraid to put the bill in. So they say, well, he's going to veto it. And I keep telling them, no, put the bill in. If you pass that bill and he vetoes it, he's got egg on his face, not you. But by you doing nothing does not solve any problem whatsoever. So In my E-Verify bill, which was promised to pass to stop illegal immigration, and by the way, that Muslims come in via legal immigration or illegal immigration. That was squelched because Bolger put it in a committee with Wayne Schmidt. That's where all bills go to die.
Now, did you, Dave? Did you not? Did it ever come out of the committee, or did it?
No.
Did it ever? It never came.
They never let them come out of committee, so they sat committee. So what
and
I did,
the committee was still controlled by the Republicans. Is that correct?
Yes,
And so,
exactly right.
what was the vote? What was the vote in that committee, or didn't it even get voted?
Well, they never voted. See, that's the other thing. They send it to the committee. There's certain people they put in positions when your bill goes to a committee, and the Speaker of the House or leader of the Senate will call them and say, "Don't let this bill come out." So they have this fake, not fake. We had a committee meeting on E-Verify, had outstanding testimony from other legislators coming from out of states and so forth, but they never let it come out. I texted the guy, "Take a vote." He was told not to take a vote. So it never made it to the floor. So there's a little element called, I can go ahead and put a paperwork in and say, I'm planning on discharging the bill to the floor. So I did that for ALEC, American Law for American Courts, and I did it for E-Verify. So I put the paperwork in, and that says the next day we're going to take this up for a vote. Because when it sits for months and months in a committee, they don't take it up for a vote. You have that right as a state representative. However, what's supposed to happen is when you do that, the next day you're supposed to vote on it, a simple up or down vote. They didn't allow it. They broke their own rules. So what they did is Bolger stood up on E-Verify and says, well, we'll take this up after the election. Well, he barely got elected as Speaker of the House for his next term. I think he only got elected by 800 votes. Had he allowed a vote and voted no on that bill, like the governor wanted him to do, he wouldn't have been elected. So that bill never saw the light of day. So those bills are still sitting there. Any legislator, and I've been encouraging to do it, can pick up ALEC. They can pick my ALEC bill, my E-Verify bill, and put it in. Of course, the governor's not going to sign them.
Now, Dave, another point of resistance on that, and I'd like you to explain this. It was the Roman Catholic Church. There was big opposition from them. You remember? I'm sure you remember that. What was the reason again?
Well, I think it comes from the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church. They think that they can really get along. Well, two things. Which bill are you talking about, ALEC or E-Verify?
I'm talking about the American Laws for American Courts.
Okay. Well, you got a pope now. You probably saw a picture kissing the imam. Excuse me. He's kind of lost it with the Muslims. He honestly thinks that they're going to treat him nice and they're going to get along just fine. And just as a side note, I got a phone call when I put that bill in from a teacher, a Christian school teacher, who told me her son converted to Islam, and Islam worships the same God we do. What an absolute lie, and she's been deceived because of the love of her son. It's not the same God. It is a made-up God. I got to back up here. Muhammad had dreams and visions. He thought he was going crazy. His wife told him, no, I don't think you're going crazy. I think you're hearing from God. So that started the beginning of Islam. He could not read or write. So people start writing down things he said and did. So even today, the Islam religion is only about 16% about the Quran. It's mostly about Muhammad. What did he do? What did he say? Well, he killed, he raped, he pillaged. Here's how he put his shoes on. Here's how he shaved. Here's the way you must wear your beard. It's all that. So getting back to the ALEC bill, when I put that bill in, I had about 190 people come to the Capitol in that little room. It was only meant for 160. And they all went and knocked on everybody's doors saying, vote for Agema's bill. Well, then I got big feedback or flack from Rashida Tlaib, who is now a congressman, because she was mad that I didn't come to her first to put that bill in. Well, why would I go to her first? I have no idea. But so she had her little meeting, and she had about 10 people show for hers. But the Muslims have money. They can throw money around. They can get lobbyists to go ahead and lobby so things don't get passed. Both E-Verify and ALEC, lobbyists worked hard to make sure this never saw the light of day. They need to be exposed. These bills need to be passed. And people are afraid to take it up. And I talked to several to put it in. I gave that bill when I left to one of the state legislators, Hooker, and he didn't go anywhere with it because he was waiting for another catastrophe. I said, don't do that. Put it in now. There's been plenty of catastrophes. You don't need to wait for any more of them. So he kind of fumbled it on now.
Dave, moving forward now into the present days a bit, knowing that you've given some good background regarding the movement of the Muslim Brotherhood, how they're peaceful at first, and they're waiting for when they get a higher percentage of the public behind them before they turn violent. But part of the process, of course, is to have elected people like Tlaib and AOC and others. And so in this last election, that certainly has happened. But also with Ellison, what's his first name? Keith Ellison, who had a high position as a congressman, and now he's the attorney general in the state of Minnesota. And so again, it's not by coincidence either that the city of Minneapolis also has a strong Muslim population there, and the mayor himself, it's him, I believe, isn't it? Yes. And he's also a Muslim Brotherhood, I believe. So they're establishing a stronghold there, and standing down and so on. That's part of the process, isn't it? That doesn't just happen there, but it begins to happen.
No, that's what they found in the basement of that El Barassi sub-basement. All those documents saying, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to get involved with schools. We're going to get involved with government. And as the numbers increase, we can start putting people in legislative positions in Congress and so forth. So their goals have never changed, and they're being very efficient at what they're doing. And I'll tell you, I was the chairman of Human Services where Tlaib was the minority chair for the Democrats. She was a radical Muslim back then. She was terribly liberal. Couldn't stand her in the committee. So when she got elected, I'm hearing all kinds of noise. I just had a whole bunch of feedback with something going on there. But when she was elected into office, I was just amazed. And she was elected because they have a massive amount of Muslims in eastern Michigan. And so her and Omar and the whole group there are changing the Democrat Party. But it's not really changing because Biden just came out with a YouTube video. I don't know if any of you saw that. He got up there and said, day one, as soon as I'm elected, I'm going to open up the immigration to all Muslims in this country. Well, get ready, folks. We are at the precipice of a civilization jihad, and we are at the precipice of basically turmoil in this country like you've never seen. And you're already seeing it in the news, but this could get a lot worse. And I've been telling people, be prepared. I know it sounds kind of radical, but you got to have food in your house. You got to have some medicine in your house. And I really firmly believe you have to have guns and some weapons in your house because you don't know how bad this could get. If Biden gets elected, we're going to lose this country. You will not recognize this country. Your kids and grandkids will not live in a free country, guaranteed. Trump is a hope. He's not a perfect man, but he understands what this is going to become. And his wife did too. If you remember when he first was elected and they had that chapel service, she was sitting on the front row with President Trump, and they had a Christian pastor come in and a Catholic pastor. And when that imam Muslim walked in, she got physically disturbed, and he reached over Trump then to his wife and just tapped her on her knee and says, calm down. She understands it too. So these people,
Dave, as we look at this, we have over these last months, because China is really where most of the attention is being drawn to from the standpoint of an international threat. But at the same time, and you alluded to this, the coronavirus, and not to say that communist China isn't a major threat, because obviously it is. But the Muslim Brotherhood, this would be another example of them. It's not like they've all of a sudden gone away or non-existent anymore. What you are really suggesting is that they are at work.
No question. Nothing's changed, but that's another thing Trump needs to do, and I hope he does it if and when he gets next elected. I think he will be elected. The Muslim Brotherhood must be declared, just like several other nations have declared. They must be declared a terrorist organization. Antifa, Hamas, Al-Qaeda, all these agencies, the mothership of those is the Muslim Brotherhood. So that has to get done. But you're right. Right now we have Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, and Islam all working to destroy America. Islam from within, Iran and Russia, and probably China with the Wuhan virus. But that's another thing. Obama and Fauci sent millions of dollars to that clinic, to Wuhan. What was the purpose of that clinic? Biological warfare. Well, they found it, and they did it. Why isn't this being exposed on the news? I do not understand this. This should be broadcast from the housetops. And then when they let it happen, of course, they were quiet about it, and they infected nations all around the world. So, folks, I'm just saying that Antifa, especially now in Black Lives Matter, let me get to Black Lives Matter. I don't think I told you. I saw a pastor in Rapids here kneeling on the ground with their hands up in the air, apologizing to Black Lives Matter. I wanted to feel, folks, they're stupid. They're ignorant about what
in Grand Rapids, you're saying that?
Yes. Yes. And I thought, you ignorant pastors. And pastors are losing it. They're afraid to speak about Islam. They're afraid to speak about homosexuality. They need to start stepping up. You need to get out of a church if they won't speak about these things. Black Lives Matter was started by 3 lesbian black women who are Marxists. And they'll tell you, they pulled this off just the last week because people were reading it, getting into it, reading it. Their goal was to destroy marriage between a man and a woman, the Constitution of the United States, and the United States itself. Why are we bending down to Black Lives Matter? And then you got people, kids in school now are going to start being taught about Black Lives Matter. This is crazy, folks. This is exactly what you don't want to happen. Parents need to get involved in their kids' education. If they're going to teach that garbage, and they're going to teach the 5 pillars of Islam,
and Dave,
they won't
I think,
teach Christianity, we got a problem.
The frustrations, Dave.
Yeah.
Part of the frustrations that I'm sure everybody that's on the call here is exactly what you're articulating here is the mainstream, MSNBC, CNN, and so on and so forth. You know, they're of course controlling the narrative. Thankfully, there are still those that are broadcasting on Fox, like primarily Tucker Carlson. So anyway, there's a battle for the narrative, for controlling the narrative, and I think more and more people are understanding who Black Lives Matter is, but many still don't. But I want to turn our attentions a bit to our primary that's coming up really soon here. Dave, are there any? You know, we are in a time where we've seen over and over again, whether it would be when the Tea Party movement of a few years ago, when there was a number of those, when they went to Washington or went to Lansing, they basically caved in, and so we've seen that tendency now for a long time. But as we look ahead in this coming primary election, particularly our local elections, do you see any people that particularly stand out that won't just be quiet but will speak up? Can you think of anybody in Michigan, for example?
Well, yeah, in our district here, Tom Norton will stand up. He's running against Meyer, who's had a gold spoon his whole life, and Appendulis, who voted to shift employers could shift their employees, which is crazy. But go to iVoterGuide.com, iVoterGuide.com. They listed, I was actually on that committee, did people in this area, and we ranked them as liberal, conservative, somewhat conservative, and so forth. You can see who those people are, who the good people are, and who the bad people are. So that's what I would suggest in your district. Look for iVoter Guides. Just get on the internet and look it up. Put in your zip code and it'll come up.
Now, are you familiar with the district Oceana, Waco, this area? Were you involved in vetting those individuals?
Not many, but I'm familiar with it because I used to hunt up there all the time. I had some land up there at one point. But yeah, there's a couple of your people up there. I'm disappointed with it. You know,
your comments on that?
Yeah, list some of your people, and I'll give you a commentary. Who are some of the people that you got running up there right now?
I would say, let's see, Scott Van Single would be one.
I'd vote for somebody else if there was somebody available.
Okay. Let's see, there's the senators, John Bumstead. You used to work with John Bumstead, I believe. He isn't running
Yeah,
this year,
Bumstead's not
but
bad.
he-
Bumstead's not bad. I had a bump him once in a while to keep him awake in my committee meetings, but he's not bad.
Mhm.
Hello?
Well, I'm also going to open up our chat. I'm going to open up our chat. Anybody that wants to
I
question
know,
in
it
there, we'll try to field a
kind of
few
reminds me of yours in
Pardon
a
me?
way. It's a darker
Who's
color
it, Bumstead?
and got the
Who's that?
Who's
Okay.
talking?
Somebody unmuted themselves by mistake. But anyway, if anybody has any particular questions in that regard. But so, I heard you in an interview recently talking about what happens when a person does get elected to, say, like the state house, the power of the state, of the Speaker of the
Yes.
House, and Majority Leader.
Sure.
That can be helpful, I think, to people to understand that the person that gets elected, that they may not feel like they're their own entity.
Correct. Here's what happens. A lot of people get elected that, like me, I didn't need the job, so I didn't need the money. Most people that get elected, it's the best job they ever had. It's the best benefits they've ever had. A lot of feedback going on there again. And so what happens is the Speaker of the House, when you get elected, the rules of the House say you are serving at the pleasure of the Speaker. Isn't that interesting? No, I'm not. I'm serving at the pleasure of the people who elected me. The Speaker of the House can kick me off all committees. He can make sure not one of my bills ever sees the floor. That's exactly what Bolger did. He can take all of my office allotment away, even though I should get that because I'm a duly elected official. He can fire all my staffers that I hire. That law, those rules have to be changed. I brought that up to several of the people that were elected here several years ago and says, change those rules. Well, they're all afraid to do it because right now the Speaker has the power to say, okay, you try to get rid of the rule that I'm basically have supreme authority, so I'm not going to give you any committee and you're never going to see a bill passed that you put in. So there's great fear. So you got Chatfield is the Speaker of the House. I know him. And you got Shirky is the leader of the Senate. So quite frankly, because there's so much power in those two people, you might as well have the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the leader of the Senate just make the decisions. Quite frankly, you do not need a full-time legislature in the state of Michigan, particularly when they only meet 85 to 92 days a year anyway, maybe 95 days once in a while. Most states have part-time legislatures. So if we have a part-time legislature in the state of Michigan and an ordinary person can run, and I wanted it to be a part-time legislature where they could work on a Friday night, a Saturday, half a day Sunday, and go home, no more than 3 months. And then you could have regular people elected. They would vote totally different when they're not bombarded by lobbyists like they are right now. The lobbyists are the biggest influential people in Lansing. And that's the problem because it costs money to run every 2 years in the House or every 4 years in the Senate. They listen to lobbyists, and this lobbyist is getting paid to get their bills passed, which are favorable to their people. And if you vote for their bills, they're going to put money in your till when you have a fundraiser. So there are fundraisers going on all the time in Lansing where lobbyists come up. Now, the best people, this is going to sound really funny to you, but it's the absolute truth. The best people are with the least amount of money in their committees to get themselves reelected because they didn't capitulate to the lobbyists and the PACs. The ones that really capitulated have huge sums of money in their committee to elect PACs. And people think, well, he must be good because he's got all this money. Just the opposite.
Dave, what do you, like in the case of, you had that opportunity to travel to Turkey in those years. Now, for an outside person, they could say, oh my goodness, he went to Turkey. Who paid for that? And was that a difficult decision, for you to make that?
No, because I wanted to go to Turkey because I heard some other guys have gone, and I knew a little bit about Islam at the time, and I've been thoroughly briefed ahead of time by Kamal and General Boykin. And I actually took my wife along too. I had to pay for her. I think the I think the Gulen Society, and they're the ones that funded that.
Education.
You got to do a little research on Gulen Society. You're going to find out they ain't a very good society either. But as a result of me coming back from that meeting and immediately in Michigan putting that American law for American courts, I don't think they're doing that anymore in Michigan, because they got very upset that I immediately put that bill in. But they paid for that.
Now,
So
would you
that's what
say
they do.
typically when there's when is that something that what's the word I'm looking for, and corporations or whatever, the lobbyists that they use that to dangle before people? I mean, would that have been your general practice to say no to such offerings?
No, it could be. If they're trying to get you to vote for a bill you know is wrong, and they're dangling money in front of you, you're taking the money. Well, you're being bought. You're just bought and paid for. In this particular case, it was they were trying to sell it as, and I didn't know that first until I got confronted with it. They were trying to sell, they just want to be friends with the U.S. Now, if you know that Erdogan is now the new leader in Turkey, he's bringing that back from more of a, it's turning it back into Islamic country with Sharia law. They used to be the military when I was there, the military had quite a bit of control yet. But now the military lost it. He's turning it back into a hardcore country. And the sad thing about that is, Turkey has the economy and the money to cause a lot of problems in the world today, and they're a nuclear capable country. So, yeah, you can turn that down. I sought it out because I knew one guy that went there, and I wanted to find out what they were up to. So I actually sought it out and says, "I'll go. Send me. I'll go." That's probably the only one.
Proceed with caution and care, but you had some counsel from
Keep
some
your eyes
top-notch
wide open.
people. Looking politically,
Keep your eyes
locally,
wide open.
Bill, one of the questions is, what do you think of the candidate Tom Reagan?
Good. I endorsed him before he ran.
Okay, good candidate. So as we are moving closer to closing, as you've painted I believe a realistic picture of America as we move into the election season, which is now like 95 days away. There's much that looks like that we're going to have a really rough time. Yet when you think of the voting map from the last time around, most of the region of the nation voted Republican, voted for Trump. It was mostly the big cities that voted. I mean, almost entirely was some major cities that voted for the left. And so I would guess you'd probably see it similar this time around, because I think that Trump is going to keep his base as he has it, but there's also a great concern about the corruption in the voting system and the control of the narrative that media has. How do you see it?
Well, you hit it on the head. One of the biggest issues I see is when the AG put out those backs that's just a recipe for corruption. You want to have your absentee ballot. You have to sign this thing. They send it back in and they send you your ballot back. Well, she sends them all out. How do you verify that? How do you verify that signature? You can't do it. There's going to be corruption in the state of Michigan, and that's why she did what she did. So if I can, and another thing you need to do, you need to be calling the governor's office. Her numbers are so skewed, and I've been preaching this now for months. When we do more testing, you will obviously find more COVID people that had COVID, and they're COVID positive. Many, most, almost all, minor, like a minor flu. Some have that. I had a neighbor that was running 3 miles a day, and he just had some sniffles. He was positive for COVID. Kids hardly ever get it unless they have some kind of other disease, and they get it, but they don't feel much. So I think what the governor's trying to do, she's going to keep this state shut down until the election, and she's hoping fewer people will show up to vote, obviously. And she's going to demand that Trump pay for all her misdeeds and the bankruptcy she's causing in the state of Michigan. But if I can go back here just a minute, what you need to be doing out there, folks, you need to be calling your senators, representatives. You need to demand that they, or ask that they put in the ALEC bill again. You need to ask that they put in the E-Verify bill. You need to ask that no illegals be allowed to get driver's license. That opens doors. That used to let them get on my airplanes. I got a little beef here with Terry. When I was a state rep, she was giving hundreds of thousands of illegals driver's license. That allowed them to get in a federal building, to get on my airplane when I flew. And she knew she was doing it. That's what bothered me. I tried to get her to stop that, and the next woman who took over did stop a lot of it, went in and got rid of it. She didn't care. I considered her basically a security risk for the United States. So no driver's license for illegals, no welfare for illegals, no education with grants and so forth, college education for illegals. If you do that, there's no incentive for them to be here. They can't get a job, can't get a driver's license, can't get welfare, they won't be here. And Congress is another thing. If you call your congressman, you need to ask them to pass a law that anchor babies are still considered illegal. Thousands and thousands of pregnant women come across the border pregnant to give birth here so they can stay. And a lot of those, most of those are on welfare, a lot. So that has to change. Our forefathers never saw
Sure.
or never foresaw what's going across our border now. And Trump
Right.
needs a bill
Now,
to finish that
in
wall.
the present day, because those bills are not going to pass right away, but I would think that one of the things that you would say to anybody that you can speak to would be, as more so than ever before, we need to be talking to our friends, our neighbors, our families, and doing all we in our churches and trying to get people to basically, if they're not registered to vote yet, but basically to get out the vote and get out the vote as never before, because there's going to be votes out there. If we do not come out in massive numbers this time, I believe that we could likely lose this thing by a significant number. I would think you would say.
I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with what you just said, but I would also say part of the problem in the United States is our churches. They're preaching a social gospel. They're afraid to speak up against issues like LGBTQ, Black Lives Matter, Islam. They're afraid of repercussions. They're afraid to speak out, and that should not be, and most are.
Well, if they're not informing, I was thankful to hear our pastor very recently actually speak into that, into the Black. It was very encouraging and very refreshing, because that is one of the strongest information sources that we can have in terms of shedding light on darkness, the darkness of Black Lives Matter. I remember, initially in those early days when Black Lives devastation that they were doing, there were polls taken that were showing that there was Black Lives Matter had a 60% approval rating, which was really discouraging. I think finally the word is getting out there and it's gone significantly. But we also know that corporate America, probably to protect their own skin, like millions and millions of dollars, 14 million over 6 years, and and on and on and on.
Much more than that. Many corporations have given money to Black Lives Matter. Some of them well-known, like Target and those kind of organizations. Don't shop there. When you see these people doing this, don't shop at those stores. Hurt them in the pocketbook. That's what they really feel the most. But if I can, I don't know how much time we got. I'd like to end with this. If we're close to the end, are we, or no?
We are close to the end. In just a second,
Okay.
Trying to see if there's any more questions. I'm not seeing any. So let's move towards closing.
Okay. Back in 2003.
So go right ahead, Dave.
What's that? Say again?
Nothing.
Okay. Back in 2003.
You're good.
Okay. Back in 2003, Muslims said they would win the hearts and minds of Americans. When we were over there in Iraq and all those places, they said, we're going to win the hearts and minds. You're not going to win the hearts and minds of radical Islamists. They don't do that. But Muslims said, we're going to win the hearts and minds of Americans. They did so. They are doing it. A gradual infiltration through immigration, legal and illegal, but mostly via schools and politics. America is becoming friendly to Sharia. Remember that. And also, I'll give you another case. There was once a pastor who became a Muslim. His name is Sharif Mahash. He is the most dangerous Muslim in the United States. Nothing happens in the U.S. without him. He's a former Christian, get this? Now he's Muslim. He sells books showing people how to kill police officers and then go underground. And the politicians have capitulated. They know this stuff's going on. They have the books that show it. Yet the guy still operates. This I do not understand. That's why I think Trump's onto something. I think our CIA, our FBI, and so forth are a deep state, and a lot of them have to be eliminated. And Trump's trying to do his best, but he's going to have to come under huge fire in this election because they know he's coming after the deep state that allows this kind of garbage.
Yeah, amen to that. Now, I think if I can get Chuck unmuted here. I don't know why I have troubles doing that sometimes, but. Oh, Chuck, you have to unmute yourself. If you would do that at this moment. I think you did. Okay, Chuck, you have a question, I believe.
I don't hear him.
I think, did we lose him? I am not seeing him. So anyway, yes, did you have anything further, Dave, that you wanted to close with?
Well,
You
just
have
be
any
advised
words of encouragement that you can offer
Sure.
to us in the minute?
Sure. The good thing about all this is because I think they've overstepped their bounds and they did it too early, people are starting to see two things. One, that all these organizations that are looting and raping and killing and burning cop cars, they're bad. We have to have police. Police officers are peace officers. No police, no peace. It's as simple as that. We have to support them. Also, Antifa, which you hear a lot about, Trump's already labeled them a terrorist organization. Most people don't know that. So Trump's on the right road. He does a lot of things people don't know. And I was quite pleasantly surprised when he got into the office, some of the things he did. I spoke up north in your area there by the Yaparosa. Are you familiar with that? And they had a bunch of people there. And it was only a couple months into his presidency, and he already passed 75 outstanding things that the other presidents had caused problems with. He's under great pressure. You need to be praying for the president. You need to be praying that he listens to the correct advisors and he eliminates the bad advisors. Because when you're hammered like he is in the news and Facebook and Twitter, they're all against him. Those people are all together trying to make sure he does not win the presidency again. They're afraid in Washington and our Secret Service and FBI, they're afraid of him getting into office and letting Barr dig into all the things that he's digging into now. There are going to be people in jail that are well-known people if Trump wins another presidency, and I'm looking forward to that.
It's hard for me to just, I'm going to throw another one out at you because I think that another thing that we need to have you speak a word to is that there's very few nationalists around, or very few that are in favor of the sovereign state or sovereign nation, and certainly that would be Donald Trump. There's a few other countries that also desire that and are seeking that, but the globalists, and that would include even Fauci, for example, and Bill Gates, and many, the majority of politicians. I know you can say something about that, and I know you'd be in agreement, but say it well. I know you will.
He who controls the media controls the people of the United States. Generally speaking, if people hear something 7 times, they believe it. So now you have all, and by the way, I think 22% of Fox has been purchased by Muslims. You're going to start to see them go down the tubes too. All your news media, Fox is an exception right now, but they're all against Trump. And like I said, Facebook, Twitter, they're kicking the president off for saying things he wants to say. Facebook's kicked me off 3 times for speaking truth about Islam. So I'm going to say it again. He who controls the media controls the people and consequently the elections. So the only way you're going to get around this is to open your mouth, speak to others, or use other mass media, texting, or whatever you have to do to get the word out. Because we're under attack, and the attack's happening from the massive amount of money the media spends on trying to eliminate Trump. If he loses this one, you are not, and I'm not just being facetious, you are not going to recognize America if he loses this. And I still contend Biden's going to pick Kamala Harris, one of the most liberal, radical people he could pick, because he wants a black female for his candidacy, for his vice presidential candidate. He's not going to last 2 years, and he won't be there. He doesn't have the wherewithal. He doesn't have the help to do it. He's just a pawn to the big game of getting someone more liberal in there. watch who he picks.
Dave, it's always a pleasure to hear you talk. And as I was saying before you were able to go on, anybody that is on Facebook, I use Facebook devotionally on my personal side, but on the American Decency side, I'm mostly informing and exhorting. But Dave Agema, I don't think anybody is clear cut, cuts to the quick any better than you, Dave. And I watch a lot of people. So I would really encourage you to look up Dave Agema because he's oftentimes got a very up-to-date take on the news of the moment. And so,
Well,
I
I gotta say, I have two Facebook accounts. One of them is quite full. It's almost 5,000. You can only have 5,000. And then the other one has only got about 1,800 in. So make sure you get the one with a picture of me standing by the F4. That's the one that's almost full, and a picture of my family. The other one, it's a totally different picture that's kind of blacked out with me, and it's kind of yellow and black, and it's got me faded out standing by the F4. That's the one you want to try to get on because I can take a lot more friends on that one.
Yeah, thanks for that word, Dave. I'm going to ask you to close in prayer in just a moment. I just wanted to remind all of you here again of the Facebook Live that we're doing tonight. That we're going to have Curtis Bowers and Chuck, who I mentioned earlier, and also Zach Laring, and we're going to have a special time of prayer. And so, in terms of our activism, prayer is a part of our activism, and we need prayer. Dave, close us, please, if you would.
Sure. Father in heaven, we come to you this day, and I just pray that the words that I speak and these other people that hear these speak are true and accurate and will go to the quick to change people's minds. I pray also that you would give President Trump the wisdom to make wise decisions. And I also pray that you would eliminate the bad advisors, and may he get good advisors. And may we have more Christian men and women in offices in Congress and in Lansing that cannot be bought with money or position. Father, we know that this country was founded on the biblical principles, and our forefathers worshiped you. It was a Christian nation. And now, even like President Obama said, we're not a Christian nation. Lord, I pray that you would forgive us for that sin. Forgive us for the sin of abortion, Lord. May our congressmen and our legislators stop that dead in its tracks, oh Lord. And may we not always just say, may God bless America, but may we bless you. And may we be on your side and say what you want said. Because it's too often said, Lord, just God bless America. God doesn't bless. And I know you don't bless, Father, those who throw you out of the public arena and throw you out of schools and kill the unborn. So, Father, we just ask for a blessing on the Christians in this nation. I especially ask that you would give us pastors that would preach the word of God without fear and with boldness. And may their flocks be the stepping stones to change this country back to what it was founded on. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dave, for taking the time out of your schedule. And we'll hope to see some of you tonight and hopefully next Thursday. And God bless you all. Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you. And hopefully next time I'll have electricity.
That'll be great, too. Great to have you. We'll have you again, Dave.
Yeah.